How did the first screening go of Planet of the Humans? What was that on Friday or Thursday or what day was it?
We've lost track. Wednesday night.
Oh, so was it far back as that?
Yeah, were you at the first screening or
no,
the second?
Yesterday's screening. I just got into Traverse City on Thursday late afternoon.
Well, we had no idea what to expect because, we're environmentalists, but we're asking questions that we don't usually ask about ourselves and about why, after decades of doing what we do, things are still getting worse. So, I was really not sure how people were going to react. I knew that there'd be a lot of, I felt there'd be a lot of enthusiasm and support, but I didn't know how much people might be paralyzed or stunned or upset or angry. And basically, we had a standing ovation, and and everybody stuck around through the credits. I don't think a single person left, and then maybe 5 people left before the discussion started, which I get.
People are going to other films. People are
almost no one left. Usually, much of the audience.
An exodus of sorts, right?
So, it was pretty moving to see people's reaction.
Right. Well, your film in particular is a catalyst for conversation. I mean, whereas maybe a typical film, you don't, people like to sit and digest. Like me personally, even though I've moderated my share of Q&As, I don't actually think they're usually good idea, because after you see a film, the more intense this applies, especially, you want to think about it, process what you just watched, rather than just jump right into a conversation about it. However, this film really lends itself to that. I'd say this has almost the opposite type of situation where it really you going right into a conversation is really good, especially because you have a lot of emotion, and I think it fuels a great conversation.
Yeah, for me, I've always visualized, and I didn't wind up saying this exactly, but in various forms, I don't have the answer. Ozzie doesn't have all the answers. The film doesn't have all the answers, but at long last, we're raising the right questions, and that really makes me hopeful that we're raising the right questions. Now, to get to the right questions, I think you have to kind of, in a way, destroy the story that we're in that's really led us down the wrong path.
And a lot of people are heavily invested in this story. I mean, the environmental movement for the past 30 years or so, I kind of use as Earth Day as the birth of the modern environmental movement, and then your film really deconstructs that whole thing, or just tears it down, the myths around that. That's heavy duty. I don't think
heavy, and it's been heavy for us. I mean, it was not easy making this film. It was at times my health was in bad shape, and
physically or mentally, emotionally.
Yeah,
I mean, which?
I think it reflected more physically, because as I uncovered the story, there's kind of a thrill of discovery, even though you're discovering dark things.
Yeah, sure.
But the aloneness of it was heavy for a while, because I had to pull back from all my, going to environmental things and going to even to social justice things, because inevitably you get, what about that? I got a biofuel car now, and I say, we might want to think that through, and that never went well to say, off the cuff, we might want to think that through.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing to make a mental or emotional investment in a set of values, values around a movement. It's quite another to actually spend a lot of your money on and make a choice of a car or a lifestyle, and you're investing heavily into it financially as well as mentally, and then you're finding out that there's it's not what it appears.
Yes,
you're
and that's
asking people to rethink again.
I think Ozzie can say how he went through this, but what I discovered is that the reason we need documentaries and films is because, and books, the short form discussion, especially as everybody gets more stressed, and frankly, as we get a society where everybody is sort of smarter than everybody else, everybody's opinion is equal, we tend to, I think, to not be listening well. But we still have this art form called cinema, where people can sit and reflect on something for a while. And we still have books, and so that's why I shifted into making a film, and kind of dropped out for a while. And I think Ozzie went through a similar thing with, writing his book.
Yeah, I came out with Green Illusions, and it was a very similar situation to what Jeff is going through now, and it's that when you take a story that everyone cherishes and you kind of flip that on its head and look at the underbelly of it, people tend to react strongly to that.
Absolutely.
And Jeff's going, and that's what I admire about Jeff's film, is that he's going much further than my book Green Illusions ever went. And when I saw what he's doing, that's really the thrill of what brought me on board. I had a visiting scholar position at UC Berkeley, and getting very frustrated with academia. Academia, usually people think, is on the forefront of everything. I find that academia tends to be a follower. And when Jeff came along with the film, and I saw what he was trying to do, I immediately left and to help him, because I saw what he was doing, and I thought, if he's successful in pulling off what he's trying to do, it's going to change the world in a really big way.
Kudos to you. That's an enormous risk to take. Because Jeff, you know, I was sitting there watching Planet of the Humans yesterday, and I wanted to ask you about this at the Q&A, but I was wondering, how do you checkerboard with your message over the green movement, the modern day environmental movement, which is essentially what you're doing? How do you get things accomplished, the goals that your film clearly is setting things up for, right? You're saying, we have to come from a whole new direction here. But how do you checkerboard with those goals over the current environmental movement? You have to kind of have those folks, don't you? And you're sort of...
We don't know the answer to that at this moment.
Yeah.
And we're going to co-discover the answer to that in the coming weeks and months and time period that this film is released, and creating a conversation. And as I said at the end of the film, I think awareness starts the journey. And I have a background in working with addiction and therapy and recovery. And, you know, if you just start out, well, what's the solution? You know, that's actually in the training I had in terms of being a therapist, that is actually what everybody wants. What's the solution?
Yeah, that's true.
But you've got to start out with identifying the problem.
Yes.
And owning it and becoming fully aware of it.
That might have been the problem here with the last, with wind and solar and these other things. People just grasped onto it so quickly and desperately, and maybe hadn't had the whole picture. Obviously, you're giving. I think
we've had the whole picture, but I think we've been shunted into what you see in the movie. We've all been shunted, kind of semi-aware and semi-willing, into this narrow story, because I think all of us at various times have thought, can this planet sustain this many people? A lot of us have thought, can we be consuming like this? Can we have an infinite economic growth? And those questions don't get propagated over the decades, and they've slowly dropped away.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to be really clear about something, because it pains me, and it's still painful to question the things I've always believed in. When I drive by wind turbines, I still think, hey, wow, I like technology. But when I realized this movie is not so much about, we're going to show you that solar and wind don't work, and we're going to show you that this is being pushed by corporations, bankers, and industrialists that profit from it. The reason I made this movie is because we're in real trouble. And as long as we're following the wrong path, we're doomed. And if we kind of can move beyond the story that technology will save us and that billionaires will save us, and begin to realize that we've got to solve the problem of a human species out of control, then there's hope. So this story is driven by my passion that's where we've got to get to. If I could have skipped this whole movie and just started there, I would have. But, time and time again, you have a conversation about this. Even in Al Gore's movie, he talked about consumption. He showed the population chart. But by the end of the movie, it was all buy some light bulbs and invest in renewable energy. And that's what drove me nuts. Is like you think that they have a holistic approach, but it all boils down to buy green.
Right. Your film tears down these icons of the environmental movement. It's not in any way disrespectful, but it definitely is. It takes on Al Gore, takes on Bill McKibben,
Sierra Club,
the Sierra Club. I mean, you have Michael Moore, so you have a good start. But have any of those folks, have they seen the film yet? I mean, you've only shown it a couple of times, I'm guessing. Really? One of the first people that have seen this film.
Yeah, 2 screenings, and we literally finished the film. We finished our test viewing of the output of the film at 3 a.m. the night before our premiere. That's how close we were cutting this.
Yeah, the second screening, in fact, was a more produced version, right? Of the.
No, it was the same version.
Oh, that you showed the other night. You didn't make any adjustments.
No changes,
to it?
but just before our world premiere.
Okay.
2 nights earlier, we had been working until 3 a.m.
Was there any doubt that this was going to be the world premiere here at Traverse City, or did you have to go through? Where was it? Are you trying to? I mean, if you get it into a festival, do you think even Sundance would show a documentary like that?
We've tried to have conversations with them.
Pretty radical.
Not got anywhere. So I don't know what that means because they haven't really responded to our outreach. So that's a very good question. I don't know if this would. Maybe what?
Well, it's beside the point now, isn't it?
It's out there. Well, one of the things
you're not going to have a Sundance premiere
that we're hardly aware of is that the foundations, film festivals, everybody in the left, liberal, environmental world, we're all deeply now embedded with these same institutions that the corporate foundations, and that's what Ozzie's been researching this for a long time about the relationship between funding.
Yeah, it's very fascinating because if you look into, film festivals are very similar to environmental organizations in that they end up being funded by large foundations that are headed by the titans of industry, and so that narrows the kinds of questions that get asked and the kind of questions that get brought to the forefront. And for documentary journalists who are doing investigative documentaries, investigative journalism, it does present certain barriers because those stories are not necessarily going to have the priority of stories that kind of fit the accepted status quo narrative.
Yeah, it was imagining people think, who's, foundations, they're doing good. And they do a lot of good, but, we're thinking, there's a bunch of hippies and lefties and, tree huggers that are on the boards at the foundations, but it really is the titans of industry often. And it's also, the foundations have investments that they've all made that they need to see a return on. So they're invested in this growth story, just like the corporations. Michael Bloomberg gave his money to the Sierra Club, as you see in the film, through his foundation. But if you listen to the second time he announces his contribution to the film, he says, we're making an additional $30 million investment.
Right.
Investment in the Sierra Club.
Right.
And he's poised through Bloomberg investments writ large to profit from everything under the sun.
Right.
And he's got a Bloomberg New Energy Finance, so he's poised to profit from...
But it's always been couched that way. I mean, the idea is that everybody's talked about investing in green energy. It's always been part of the way it's couched as far back as I can recall. And that jobs and all these things have always been attached. There's big economy around the green movement, but nobody really went too deep beyond that. They was like it just justifies so much just positioning it in that way that nobody really went that much deep. I just want people who are listening to understand that your film, again, it's called Planet of the Humans, having a world premiere here at Traverse City Film Festival, is that essentially the green movement is, I guess I'm using the word girdered by big industry, and it's sort of behind the curtain.
Something I really admire about Jeff's film is that it's not a preachy film. It's not a film that you go in and he's going to litter you with facts.
Right.
He really just pulls back the curtain and he allows you to see footage.
Literally, in some cases, where they're at rally/festivals, which is a big. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just interrupted you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I know. I'm just saying these rallies and festivals are such a great way to bring in new generations because they usually hire pop stars to perform, and the pop stars are only too willing because it gives them credibility. And I'm not even criticizing those people. I understand it. I probably was one of that. I was very attracted to shows like that.
Absolutely.
And then you're going behind the stage. They're saying, the organizers or they bring in the big environmental rock stars, and they're saying, this rally and festival is 100% solar or run 100% solar, and you're literally going behind the curtain and finding out that they're plugged into the grid.
Well, in the case of the Earth Day Festival, the one festival they're plugged into the grid, and the other one they have diesel generators.
Yeah, right. But that is an extension of everything we're talking about. All of the in general speaking, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but the environmental movement is plugged into the grid and run by diesel, right? I mean,
behind the curtain are a tremendous amount of fossil fuels. And we found no evidence that all of the green stuff displaces fossil fuels.
Right.
Maybe because it uses them and requires them for support.
But the claim is they are. That's the problem.
And even if they did, there's two other factors. One is you're just we've got this fantasy that technology can emerge from what? From where? And we've not cemented in our minds that every technological thing, from our iPhone to a solar panel, requires an immense amount of destruction to the planet. It's just it may be a different kind of destruction, but it's still a form of destruction. And the shocking thing we did find out is, and it also always involves fossil fuel destruction. That was to find out how solar panels were made. I mean, I asked Ozzie, help me figure this out.
It was always being
that's what you hear.
Message that it was right.
But
you find out that actually it's not that they don't use sand because there's too many impurities in sand, and so they use this mined quartz. And
mined quartz.
Right. And then the second ingredient, actually the largest ingredient of building a solar panel, is coal. And then you have to mix the mined quartz with the coal. You heat it to a very high temperature, and it goes through a chemical reaction where you get silicon metal and carbon dioxide, which just goes off into the atmosphere. And so that's the birth of a solar cell. That's the birth of the supposed green energy miracle.
But to find that...
to find that is extremely difficult. And
to find what?
To find out the process.
You're saying, right, so I can't just go Google this and find the
you
the
can't,
website that says this?
It's like one of the few things you can't Google. It's very difficult to find out how a solar cell is made if you try to go back down the long tail where it began. And there's various reasons for that, but some of it's couched in terms of trade secrets or, for the various organizations that are involved. But also there's this issue of strategic ignorance. We don't really want to know where it's made or how it's made because, once we've labeled it as green, it's really to no one's benefit to do any more further research than that.
This is where you get into the more existential level to your documentary, where there's, I'd say about midway through, you have a conversation with a
social psychologist,
but he's more of a philosopher.
Yeah.
Maybe those two things are intertwined. Maybe you need to be a philosopher if you're a social psychologist. And I think you actually discover this and present it to him, Jeff, which is where you're saying it's the environmental movement is really, when you get down to it, we invest ourselves in this as any fundamental Christian would to their religion, right? We need this in order to understand ourselves. We associate ourselves with a movement.
The wonderful thing about us on the left and those of us who've always believed in green solutions is that we do care about the planet. And we do believe in climate change. And we do know that the biodiversity is collapsing. And we do know we're in trouble. And what I discovered and presented to Sheldon was this idea that our own fear, our own virtual terror at what we're facing in terms of the potential death of everything we know and love and our own mortality, that's so difficult to face that perhaps we've grabbed onto this green fantasy because it's just, somebody's working on it. Oh, they've got a solution. Good, I don't have to live in this fear. And then it allows us to avoid the really difficult question is, this is not one thing. Climate change, as bad as it is, it's us. It's our whole human deal. It's all the profits we want to make, all the development we want to do, all the travel we want to do, all the children that we want to have, everything connected together. Mm-hmm. And all that, this story, and I just want to be fair to us too, the fact that human nature doesn't want to look in the mirror all the time, they've taken advantage of, and they have funded the environmental movement and narrowed it down to these green solutions. And I believe, this is not a conspiracy theory, but all of the broader things that we know we have to do as well, stop this growth juggernaut, those are off the agenda. And I believe that's, consciously or unconsciously, their successful mission in making sure the environmental groups only promote the thing that's going to profit them and nothing that's going to threaten the system that we have that benefits billionaires and capitalists is ever threatened. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as we start asking, how are we going to all live more locally and peacefully and grow food locally and and enjoy our local environment rather than running around the planet and trying to make as much money as we can, that's a threat to all of these people funding the environmental movement, I believe. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. Yes. You're really shaking people out of a slumber with this documentary, for lack of a better term. I mean, which is really hostile. It's a hostile thing.
That sound too hostile.
It's like, well, it's comfortable. I need my rest. I need to. I need to get my 8 hours, and
I just want to go
you're
build
waking
a
me
cabin.
up. So it's gonna. I'm just wondering how.
I was
what
just
the
there
reaction
too.
will
I
be.
just wanted to go build a cabin, be a mountain guy, put some solar panels
Sure.
up, and I'm good, right?
Well,
I've done my
you
thing.
spent many decades, right, as an environmentalist, as you mentioned, and now you yourself have to kind of rethink. And I don't know, Ozzie, if you were woke recently, or this is something doesn't come as any surprise to you that what your film has uncovered.
We were just talking about this yesterday, that it's taken Jeff and me like a decade or many years to come to these realizations through an incredible amount of research and work and reckonings and surprises along the way, and we bring all of that into a film that's 90 minutes long. And we have to remember that the audience is going through this, what took us 10 years to go through, the audience is going through it 90 minutes. And we weren't sure if it would work until the premiere. We didn't know if people would leave the theater or if they would love it. And thankfully, they
neither
love it.
is the answer.
Yeah.
Because I was in the theater, nobody left, and I don't know if anybody loved it. You're not asking for love, though.
No, we're not asking for love. I think what we got was people who were grateful for being told or shown a story that they haven't been seen anywhere else.
Well, you have Michael Moore's name on it, on the film, on the credits as an executive producer. Clearly, that will draw attention. That might be that much harder to get for the film because you're obviously going to be facing a lot of pushback or resistance in general, right? Again, this is like mainstream environmental movement.
Things can change quickly.
That's good.
I think that might be true, but it might not be true. I'm stunned by the lack of animosity, and I know that both screenings were filled with environmentalists.
Oh, yes. I was wondering about that.
Because everybody in this town.
Do you think anybody's snuck in, that works for any, Sierra
I think
Club?
We heard from somebody that's part of the Sierra Club that she was actually kind of stunned by this and is rethinking things.
Okay.
We heard from people that have green investments that are rethinking their green investments. Another filmmaker or somebody with a part of the festival that was walking by when people were asking me about the film, she shouted out life-changing. A local psychologist emailed me masterpiece. So, I think I'm shocked by the high level of acceptance, the lack of blowback right now. Now, that could change tremendously, but the thing we know about humans is that we're difficult to change. We can't change. We refuse to change. We're not going to change until the day we do. And things can change really fast. It wasn't that long ago that gay marriage was becoming illegal across the country. How long did it? In the snap of your fingers.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't that long ago. Remember, I was in New York when the laws came into place that you couldn't smoke in restaurants and bars, and all the New Yorkers were going, "Oh, nobody's going to do this. Nobody." And I was there that very night. The next day, it happened.
Yeah. Right. Well, yes, I suppose that's true, but there are usually decades of
work.
Gay marriage. There have been steps and steps for decades for equal rights for gays, and then if you talk about the smoking rule, at least there have been decades of where they took ads off the TV for commercials. Smoking commercials were removed. It's been a process of, and then no smoking in this spot and that spot, and so when they there has been your is a little bit more. I don't know, but I understand your greater point
that we don't know, and I think we would assume you're correct.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that we found a lot of people in academia, in industry, the people we interview in the film that don't write about this, but they were willing to tell us the truth. So that makes us wonder how much of a hidden need for this there is, where people have wondered, where does the power come from for my electric car?
Yeah.
Or people. Were you surprised at the people in the solar industry that responded to us by saying, no, the ones the solar experts that we interviewed at the conference that were willing to say, I don't think this can run the grid by itself.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Why were they willing to tell us that?
Yeah.
Well, did you have a thought about that?
Oh, no. I mean, I hadn't had time to kind of just let it all sink in. But I guess what you're saying is that people open, that are even invested, that they do. I mean, you also have a generation or two now that have been part of the environment, what I'll call the modern environmental movement, and we're still in deep trouble. We're still getting the messages that we're still in deep trouble. So, maybe they're realizing, well, something's not working.
Mm-hmm.
What are we missing? What are we missing from this? And that's what your documentary presents. Is it might be coming back down to just individuals radically changing the way they think and live.
I think that's part of it, and I think all of us that are ethical and want to be in the right place need to do that. But I think what the film suggests to me is we need to have a completely different environmental movement, because right now we can't make the choice. If I had to get to L.A. for an interview,
right,
how am I going to get there?
Right.
There's no high-speed rail. Right now, if we wanted to get around this town on bicycle, we're not getting there, are we? I mean, it's difficult through. So, I mean, they have bike paths, but you take your life in your hands.
Well, people are riding bikes in New York, where I'm from, and I don't know.
But they still have the car, because we don't talk about growth.
Yeah.
So we got the bikes.
Right.
Now we got more cars. Now we got more planes.
Yeah.
And so it's really a systems design question. And I'd like to have an international conference, instead of on climate change, on human change. Mm-hmm. How are we going to deal with this infinite growth concept and change that into something that would actually truly be sustainable? How are we going to deal with the tremendous overconsumption that we do in the Western world? How are we going to deal with overpopulation around the world? Mm-hmm. We need to have all of our environmental groups, politicians, and the UN focused on these larger questions, not just when are we going to get more solar panels.
The last question I have is, in a sense, the documentary is making us question everything. Should we also question you and your documentary too? And
Absolutely. Go look things up. Think for yourself. Come talk to me. Send me challenges. Mm-hmm. We do that ourselves. The time we come across something where it's like, this seems unbelievable, we're even, we research to see how we're wrong. Mm-hmm. And we just uncovered something stunning that's not in the film, and we've sent this to a fact checker before we even dare bring it out there, because it's so stunning we can't even believe it. So please
we really
question us.
We often think we're wrong, and then our fears are
hope.
Sometimes we hope we're wrong.
Yeah.
Is more like it. And sometimes we even seek outside people, like Jeff said, to just like, where are we wrong here? We can't find where we're wrong.
Yeah, please show us.
Yeah.
please make us.
If we don't
prove us wrong.
I think that's where we're at. Is we have to ask the right questions, and certainly you need to question everything. That's part of the message of the film. Is
yes.
We need to look deeper.
Right. You need to not just buy the message, but look deeper. I understand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, the name of the documentary is called Planet of the Humans, and it's directed by Jeff Gibbs, longtime film producer, documentary film producer.
Bowling for Columbine was my first film I helped on.
Never heard of it, but it sounds really
turned out okay, so they had me back for a couple more.
And Ozzie Zehner is the author of the book Green Illusions, available where books are sold. Thank you both. This has been terrific. I really appreciate your making time during the festival to come on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. This is our first interview.
It is?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, my gosh.
Second. Well, we had a...
Just say that. That's fine.
Yeah, it is.
It's the
first recorded interview.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Okay. Well, I wish I had turned it on. Thanks both, and good luck with the documentary.
Thank you.
Thanks.